This is the second episode of the podcast about the Moomin Phenomenon, and our subject today is Moomin as philosophy.
Once upon a time, there was a Hemulin who worked in a pleasure ground, which doesn't necessarily mean having a lot of fun. The Hemulin's job was to punch holes in tickets so that people wouldn't have fun more than once. Such a job is enough to make anyone sad if you have to do it all your life.
I was 6 years old and I got a Moomin book for Christmas by my father. And it was Moominland Midwinter. And the first lines in the book, it says, the sky was almost black, but the snow was blue in the moonshine. It's a beautiful beginning of a book. Like many other children, I think I wanted to be in Moominvalley. I think there are adults also who want to be in Moominvalley for sure. I'm sure of that.
A Moomin philosophy is father figures or the mother figures can be very childish, and the child figures like Moomin can also be very responsible and adult in a sense. So the childishness and taking responsibility can coexist in the same character.
Well, you're probably thinking, did I hear that correctly? There's something called the philosophy of Moomin. You probably thought this was just a little podcast about sweet little creatures. Well, apparently there are those who go around trying to figure out some deeper meaning in stories about the Moomins and their adventures in Moominvalley. They see Moomin as an allegory for Plato, Moomin Mama as Socrates, and Filionk as Kierkegaard. I wonder what the philosophical thinkers of old would think of that. Would Immanuel Kant be a fan of Moomin's ethical mindset? Would Nietzsche argue that Snufkin is delusional? Would Mary Wollstonecraft write an essay on the righteous anger of little Mai? And we just heard about Hemulin, that he was doomed to punch holes in pleasure ground tickets so that people wouldn't have fun more than once. That such a job is enough to make anyone sad if you have to do it all your life. What does that allude to, if not deeper philosophical thinking? My name is Jennifer Saunders, and today we'll be taking a dive into trying to understand the true meaning of the thing they call Moomin philosophy, and to figure out what the Moomins are really all about. Because Moomin philosophy is crucial and fundamental to Tove Jansson's creation. So let's pretend for a moment that we are philosophers seeking out the symbolism and meaning of Moomin. In true scientific form, our first step should be to return to the original texts. The 9 books that author and artist Tove Jansson wrote between 1945 and 1970. Now here is a quote from Moomin Papa in the book Tales from the Moominvalley.
Just think, never to be glad or disappointed. Never to like anyone and get cross at him and forgive him. Never to sleep or feel cold. Never to make a mistake and have a stomach ache and be cured from it. Never to have a birthday party, drink beer and have a bad conscience. How terrible.
Wouldn't it be lovely to be free of aches and pains? I mean, for me, obviously, I'm getting older. It'd be absolutely lovely. But as horrid as stomachache can be, there's nothing to beat the feeling of getting well again, of sudden pain relief. And isn't that what being human is? To feel and then feel some more. To experience pain and pleasure in equal measures. Or, as Moomin Papa continues,
the world is full of great and wonderful things for those who are ready for them.
As we delve into Moomin philosophy in this episode, we'll be speaking with academics and actual philosophers who scratch their beard, wring their hands, and furrow their brows daily, trying to study the meaning of the Moomins' adventures. If you paid attention at the start of the show, please, I hope you did, you may have heard the Swedish author and literature professor Boel Westin describe how she, even as a child, wished she could go into Moominvalley. Almost as if it were some sort of higher plane like Nirvana or Shangri-La. And perhaps that is also a component of the Moomins as philosophy. To escape the mortal coil, to live as one of Tove Jansson's many characters and creatures in a world that doesn't suffer the same problems we do. And if we decide to look at the Moomins as philosophical role models, who, in the gallery of Moomin characters, would you like to be if you could choose? I sort of know mine, but I'll divulge that later on. In the meantime, let's travel to North London to a stone cottage filled with books, and we'll meet the actor Samuel West, whose daughter is named after one of the Moomins' most beloved and pugnacious characters, Little My.
My daughter, she has 3 names and a surname, and her third name is Mai. Partly because she was born in May, but also because we wanted her to have a connection to anger that Mai has, which may have backfired slightly. And one of the first things that my daughter learned was that extraordinary line from Moomin Philosophy where she says, "If you're angry, then you're angry," said little Mai, peeling a potato with her teeth. "Everybody has a right to be angry. Sometimes you've got to be angry. Every little creep has a right to be angry." And she learnt it by heart because it spoke so much to her feeling of... And we wanted her to be that person, and she is that person.
Isn't Little My marvellous? And what is it about Little My in particular that makes Samuel want his daughter to be like her? A lot of people out there have different Moomin characters as role models, despite, or maybe because of, their flaws and quirks that both children and adults identify with in different ways. What is it about the Moomins that appeals to us in that way? It's now time for a battle of minds. 3 academics, 2 professors of literature and 1 philosopher will try to explain to us what Moomin philosophy actually is. First up is Professor of Literature Björn Sundmark, who hails from the university town of Lund in the south of Sweden.
Yeah, we're sitting in Lund, and I'm looking at my hometown, and it's glorious weather. Yeah, so it is really a student town, and it's an old student and cathedral town. You can see traces of the medieval town structure with the winding streets and old houses, and it's a bit like Lund Uppsala is a bit like Oxford Cambridge, that kind of competition between 2 old universities. Yeah. And I guess for many Swedish people, the Astrid Lindgren is number 1. But for me, the Moomin books were really. I rooted for Tove Jansson in that competition, or if it is, it's not really. But I mean, the great thing about Tove Jansson is that she both writes and illustrates her own work. She also there's a kind of complexity in it that she. You can read it the books as an adult. You can read it as a child, and you still will always get something out of it.
Well, and I thought Sweden was mostly associated with Astrid Lindgren, the author of Pippi Longstocking. But who does Björn identify with among the Moomin characters?
I mean, I would love to say, people say, "Oh, I would love to be Snufkin, the vagabond who sort of." But I mean, the truth to say, I mean, if you're a scholar, I mean, you're bound to be in the Hemulon because we categorize, we try to understand how things are constructed and things like that. So I guess when I have slideshows and give talks on the Moomins, I often have a picture of a hemulin, a small one, on the first slide, and next to my name. and it's not because I really want to be one, but I realize that I have a lot of that in me. I think, though, that maybe a better or a more productive way of saying it is that Tove Jansson has identified aspects that we all have in us to a lesser or greater extent. So, I mean, I would think that I have a little bit of Moomin troll and little bit of Snufkin in me, as well as the Hemulin characteristics, and say that, well, I have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and so on. Yeah.
Well, a little bit of everything, in other words, if that makes sense.
I think it's not a coincidence that several of her short stories, like for instance from The Invisible Child, have been used in university teaching of psychology, like the Philly Jonk who believed in disasters, or the short story The Invisible Child as well. I've seen them in English handbooks on psychology, where you know they are actually used as examples of certain trauma and things like that.
You were talking about the wind, the Philly said suddenly. A wind that carries off your washing. But I'm speaking about cyclones, typhoons, Gaffside dear. Tornadoes, whirlwinds, sandstorms, flood waves that carry houses away. But most of all, I'm talking about myself and my fears. And even if I know that's not done, I know everything will turn out badly. I think about that all the time, even while I'm washing my carpet. Do you understand that? Do you feel the same way?
So do I see myself as a filionk? No, I don't think so. I mean, sometimes thoughts get twisted and warped, and you can see disaster on the horizon, even though it's just a mirage. And there's definitely a little bit of catastrophizing filionk in most people, I suppose, but not terrifically in me. Remember Malin Tjärnström from our previous episode about Moomin fans? The woman in the north of Sweden who already had Little Maj and Snork Maiden tattooed on her body and was about to get a new one with Moomin Mama. Well, she sends her regards and is apparently thinking of getting yet another Moomin character etched into her skin, and the character is the Groke. Yes, we shiver at the thought of her, cold, lonely, turning the ground to ice wherever she goes. But perhaps that's appropriate for someone living so close to the Arctic Circle. Let's give the northern Swedish town of Luleå one last shivery visit before we visit warmer climes.
I really, really, really like the character, the Groke. I don't see myself in her, but she's such a cool analogy for, well, mental health issues, people that don't fit in really, people that are misunderstood, and real depression. And wherever she steps turns into ice. And one night, Moomin is out by the sea and he sees these seahorses. It's not real seahorses, it's horses in the sea. And he thinks they're so beautiful, and then I think he scares them, and he tries to lure them back by swinging his lantern. And all of a sudden, he's like, whoa, it's cold. And he looks up and there's the Groke. And I remember reading just how she worded it. It kind of made me feel, it's the Groke, you know. I felt that fear that one felt when I was a child and saw her on TV and stuff. And then he goes down every night to try to lure back the horses. And every night the Groke comes and stares at the light because she loves that light. And then the fuel goes out, so he doesn't go down there. and he hears her cry. Finally, he goes down there without the lantern. And when she sees him, she starts singing and dancing because she was just enjoying his company. And when she leaves, he sees that the ground beneath her isn't frozen like it always used to be. And it's just so beautiful because all a Groke needs, understanding and love and companionship. And it's not easy being a friend or a companion or even a relative to a person that's hard to handle, hard to deal with, have diseases like mental health problems. But it's also the need to be accepted and to have a connection to people and a thing to do or something. That's really important for everyone, whether you're a big, grey, scary thing or you're a human being.
A dancing Groke. Well, the image makes me warm up a little bit. But we're heading back to the south of Sweden now, to Lund, where we left off with literature professor Björn Sundmark, having a look at the appeal of different Moomin character personas.
One could say that many of her characters and creatures are stereotypical. And I mean, even the main characters like Moomin Papa with his top hat and stereotypically masculine and role, or Moomin Mama with her handbag and her apron, and they're kind of stereotypes in one sense. But the thing is, when you start reading about them and then read several stories, you are not left with a stereotypical view of these characters. So you get a much more complex picture of them. So, I mean, you have the vagabond Snufkin. You have Little Me, who is always angry or has very strong emotions. You have the flirty Mimble. You have the Hemulans are all like people like me. They are scientists, researchers. They geek out on different things. But I mean, all of the characters, when you start looking at how they're represented in different stories, in the comic strip, in the books, etc., they grow on you, and you realize that there is always more to them than the initial. In her case, is that her invented creatures we cannot associate them with any particular ethnicities or religions or countries or languages. She has conceived these characters and creatures as something completely original and out of her own mind. And that makes it possible for us to use the stereotype and the way we tend to think in stereotypes, but not associating them with a certain class or group of people. And then we can learn how to get under that first impression of stereotype and see the complexities that we all have. So I think that's something that we can learn through her work. Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to tell you my philosophical Moomin role model. It's Mimble, of course. As I mentioned in our previous episode, playing her in the Moominvalley series from 2019 has left a little bit of a mark on me. If anything, I am Mimble more than I am Jennifer. Another person who's also given the philosophical aspects of Moominvalley a lot of thought is literature professor Boel Westin, who we heard earlier in the episode. Tove Jansson and the Moomins have been a large part of both her private and professional life. One could almost say that she's a permanent resident in the world of the Moomins.
Well, I think a lot of the books, and the books they're part of my life, I can say, or the Moomin world, and I mean the work of Tove Jansson are part of my life. And I was thinking a lot about that, and I thought, but Boel, 25 years, now you have to stop. You have to write about something else. And I have written about other things, but no one who, when I get called, can you come and lecture, it's always about Tove Jansson, so I just continue. But no, but I'm very interested still. And I still read the books, and I've recently published an essay on silence in the Moomin books, in the Moomin world. That was a subject I haven't touched on before. Yes, the silence in Moominvalley. Why are people silent, and what does the silence mean? For example, there are several scenes when males, I mean, the snufkin, snusmumrikan, and Moomin troll, are sitting together, but they don't have to speak. They have the connection between them, the male connection. And that's more rare with the female characters. That's one thing. But also how she, for example, describes the silence of nature. I just love her descriptions of nature.
The very last house stood all by itself under a dark green wall of fir trees, and here the wild country really began. Snufkin walked faster and faster, straight into the forest. Then the door of the last house opened, a chink, and a very old voice cried, "Where are you off to?" "I don't know," Snufkin replied. The door shut again, and Snufkin entered his forest with 100 miles of silence ahead of him.
Did you hear the sound of the silence? Now, there's an old Arabic proverb that says, "Speech is silver, silence is golden." And while I agree with the silence part, I would like to say I think the old Arabic philosopher who coined the phrase may have just underestimated the silver. I mean, I wouldn't have a career without the silver, so to speak. Or is that just gilding the lily? But then I'm just mixing my metaphors. I'm just talking too much. I'd be an awful philosopher because I'd be impossible to quote, at least, wouldn't I? Anyway, I think I'll just stick to comedy. And we'll get back to listening to the real philosophical minds.
And also, I think one thing is important. I should check this, because this is quite a good the Moomin books, and I mean the original books, of course. There are classics, of course, but there are also some sort of iconic fiction of texts and pictures, and they're providing us with knowledge and means to experience our surroundings and describe the world around us. For example, I might say that we all have a Groke in our neighborhood, perhaps, and we have met a Philosopher and a Moomin. And there are lots of muskrats in the academic world, for example. People are just trying to say they're thinking and so on, and they don't want to do anything, but they're very keen on drinking coffee and eating cakes that someone else has baked and so on. So you can see your own world in the books, and you can relating. Yes, she mirrors our world, but she's adding something too, and that's great.
So all of this is what is referred to as Moomin philosophy.
Well, yes, you can talk about some sort of Moomin philosophy, but for example, how they live. I mean, how do you live in Moominvalley? Are you Moomin-minded? People were talking about that sometime. Their tolerance, their solidarity, and above all, I think there's a constant belief in change. That things may be good, they may be fine and so on, but they have to change sometimes. That's a thing that Moomin troll discovers in Moominland Winter. That yes, the world, his world is, he loves his world, but it has to change. It can't be the same always. And that is a theme that's coming back in the books. You have to. They're searching for something, and I don't. She changes also the characters. The Moomin Papa is perhaps not quite the same Moomin Papa as he was in the beginning.
Literature professor Björn Sundmark, who identifies as a little bit of Hemulin and a little bit of Snufkin, would like to add his 2 cents about Moomin philosophy.
A Moomin philosophy is a version of the live and let live a notion that with a huge allowance for diversity, Moominvalley is a place for everyone, I would say. So in that sense, it's very much in tandem with what one could call a very liberal and eccentric worldview, perhaps one could say, and individualistic also. I think that the Moomin trolls are all, in a sense, very individualistic, and many of the characters and creatures as well that inhabit that world. But at the same time, there is a sense of responsibility taken for each other creature in that world, and a sense of collectivity, of sharing, definitely. So the Moomin philosophy, I think, is in that sense, it's individualistic, but also one of solidarity. But of course, a philosophy it's a huge term. I mean, one could also talk about it as being a philosophy of life, in the sense that enjoyment of life, of living. I mean, that's something that all of the books really portray. I mean, very often you have that they actually seek out adventurous or even dangerous situations because they want to enjoy life to the full, as it were. If you can do something that is fun or combine cooking with doing something fun, that's, the best, or doing a garden in a fun way, or they make an adventure out of life, I would say. Another maybe aspect of philosophy is that there is no clear-cut boundary between child and adult in the Moomin books, which is unusual for children's books, I think. So I think that's very refreshing. I think I liked that also when I read it as a child, that a child character doesn't have to be childish, and vice versa. An adult character can be extremely childish.
In the Finnish capital of Helsinki, there's a real-life philosopher who spends her days thinking about the Moomins. Her name is Sanna Tirkkonen. And where do you meet a philosopher? Well, we're meeting in a spanking new library that looks like a celestial bridge of wood and glass, complete with very busy book-sorting robots to provide a sort of extra futuristic element.
We are in Oodi in Helsinki. It's a new library that Finland got for its 100th birthday. I used to live very close by, and then I came here often. I also used to come here for work, and also when it was really hot. Like today, it's not. It's like this rainy, snowy sleet that we have today, but I used to come here very often to cool down, also to work in a very nice spot, and I could spend even the whole day here. Yeah, I'm a philosophy researcher, and I'm very, very interested also in the Moomins. Of course, I'm a Finn. I feel that I was raised by the Moomins in a sense that I got all the books when I was very small. I had just learned to read. So I read the Moomin books already then. Actually, there has been complaints that there are not so many books in this library. So what we usually do is that we order books here, and then there are robots, and the robots bring us the books. We don't communicate with the robots, we just order them online, and I know that there are robots organizing the books and just bringing them to the bookshelves. Okay, so let's go to the philosophy section.
We find ourselves in the library's philosophy section. The robots are busy scurrying around everywhere in silence. They look like little boxes about 50 centimetres tall. It's like watching something in slow-mo. It's pretty cool. Anyway, we're not here to watch this new version of slow TV, but to talk Moomin philosophy with Sanna Türkkönen, herself a philosopher.
So I'm not sure if the Moomins have like one philosophy. It's more like they have lots of philosophical themes. And of course there's Tove Jansson's wisdom in the books. So there are many philosophical themes such as freedom, even disobedience, but then acceptance, accepting your loved ones as they are. Also difficult emotions she deals with a lot, like grief and sadness and loneliness. And at the same time, joy and love, being compassionate, loving your family members even you don't always understand them. So all of these themes you can find in the Moomin book. So there's lots of wisdom and then also some more specific philosophical themes.
As Sanna grew older, the memories of the Moomin books began to gnaw away at her. What, she wondered, had she actually read as a child? So she decided to reread the books.
Little creatures who are also like facing the same troubles as we are as human beings. And that was interesting to me. I needed to go back to them and read them more and pause and think again. Yeah. Then I needed to read them all in a row, and I did. Like start from the first ones and go to the last one. Now it's been already some years, so I don't remember everything by heart anymore, but I just remember these moments that I needed to stop and read a sentence again. And then, because I had already studied philosophy then, like I had already studied a lot, and I was like, then at the time I was doing my PhD. And so, of course, I had so much more context to them as well. And so I remember there, like, Tutik is saying things like, everything is so uncertain, and exactly that is what makes me feel so reassured. And then I had to read it again, and I understood that, it's not just a slogan about, life is so uncertain. It was also like the character was reflecting like these big eternal philosophical questions. Like in the passage, they are actually wondering just the northern lights, and they're thinking, how are they, the northern lights? Like, do we only see them, or in which sense do they exist? And all of these are very big, like eternal philosophical questions. Like, how is something like light? Is it something that we can touch, or how is it in this world? And how do we experience that? And there were so many different passages that I just had to stop and read again. And like, okay, these are very big, deep thoughts that philosophers haven't solved.
So, do we find that rereading children's books as an adult gives you a whole new perspective? Well, the Moomin books are no exception. Sanna Türkkönen walks us through to the children's section where the Moomin books belong.
Oh, here.
Things a little noisier here.
Here they are. Yeah, these were the ones that I would already have in my childhood. Who will comfort Toffel? Yes, these I remember very well. And all of the Tove Jansson's great illustrations. Invisible Child, yes. A colleague of mine has also written about that, a very beautiful essay, how it's important to feel anger. It's about that. So anger is not only a bad thing, and also how sarcasm Yes, so that's why Ninni, the main character, becomes invisible, because she had an aunt who always treated her with like that. So there was some like sarcasm always, like when they were communicating, and then she just became very, very shy and became completely invisible. And then he goes to the Moomin family, and they start to treat her better in a way that you're just supposed to, and they just live their normal lives, and then gradually she becomes visible again, and she becomes visible in the moment when she's able to show her anger. So it's like very a family therapy book, really. Moomin Papa at Sea is one of the books where the family is really going through a crisis, and it goes to an island, and because the father in the Moominvalley, he feels that his life is somehow meaningless or pointless, and he doesn't find a purpose in this cozy family life. Yeah, so the whole family goes there, but then on the island, they actually, how I found it was that they all feel somehow lonely, but in different ways. I read the whole book as a philosopher, and I found that there was so much like existentialism in it, like a philosophical tradition from the 19th and the 20th century that thinks about the being, like the meaningfulness and meaning of it all, and meaning of how to find purpose and all of these questions, and how you might feel anxiety facing these very big questions, eternal questions of life. And then I started to be more and more focused on the loneliness that the characters seem to be feeling in that situation, when facing these big questions in life, and especially when one person in the family is facing them and the other ones are just dragged along to an island. And then on the island, the other ones feel kind of displaced, and they don't find a purpose. Like Moomin Mama doesn't really know what to do there, because she wants to do the things that she could do in the Moominvalley. Like she wants to grow flowers, but nothing grows in that remote island, and she really needs to find the meaning again. But then there's also a little Moo, for instance, is with them there, and it's not so common that, for example, loneliness is seen something that is very activating, that makes you do things. Usually we see that it's a state that we tend to perceive as something that people are very withdrawn and they're not doing anything. But Little Moo is very, very active character. And then we learn in the book that actually she has been adopted to the family. So she has been abandoned once. So she's the type of character who then is just being very active, always surviving. And then Tove Jansson writes that she's actually the one who survives the best of this whole family crisis, because the atmosphere is really tensed on the island. It's not like a cheery atmosphere there at all. And then the little Moo is like, because she knows how to cope, and she knows how to survive, and also how to just focus on herself. And that's why she survives the best on the island, with that type of loneliness that she doesn't even really care so much about it. It's not like such an issue for her.
I used to stand before the mirror and look deep in my unhappy eyes and heave sighs such as, "Oh, cruel fate! Oh, terrible lot! Nevermore!" And in a few minutes, I felt a little bit better.
See a Moomin Mama that we've so used to, that she's the one who comforts others, always takes care, cooking, baking, adorable mother figure. But in Moomin Papa at Sea, we see her displaced and in a completely different way, that she grieves and is in the wrong place, is homesickness, misses everything that is in Moominvalley, and now is like on an island that is very difficult environment. And then she starts to paint, and through creativity she learns a new relationship with the island, and a new meaning. First, she paints repeatedly all of the things that are in the Moominvalley, the flowers and furniture, little things that she really misses that they don't have on the island. And then she repeatedly starts to paint herself. And then there's little Moo, who always says the truth, even other ones don't want to hear it. And I'm not sure if it's true, but in this sense, it's like, in this occasion, it's some like sort of frankness that she just says it, that, oh, that's sickly, you're just painting yourself there. And that's something that we wouldn't think that Moomin Mama ever does. She doesn't focus on herself because she focuses always on the others. But then there's a scene where she falls asleep. She's painting and she falls asleep. And then she really is like immersed in the painting so that she's able to like physically feel the Moominvalley. So she like feels the bark of the woods and smells the roses and hears the birds and everything. So in this sense, like she goes into the painting. So it's this kind of experience. But I think what happens there, maybe psychologically, is that she's able to, through this painting, like representing everything that she misses from the Moominvalley, that she's able to give some sort of a figure that why she is feeling so bad. Like she's able to picture it and have grasp it then, like it's illustrated, and then she knows, okay, these are the things that I miss. And once she's able to face that and all of the difficulties and all of that she misses, she's able to start to create something new. Mm-hmm. And that's so beautiful about that story. But then she's able to, okay, now I'm on this island. Now I'm in a completely new situation. How to continue from here.
As you enter each new stage of life, you should really revisit the Moomin books. I wonder what kind of therapy they'll offer me now.
If you've had a family crisis, I think you might recognize some of the characters better. At least I've read it as a completely different book when I was adult, because I was able to also to take it in that the Moomins, they are not only like good or bad or black and white. They have so many different sides to them. And everybody goes through these crises at some point in their lives. It doesn't need to be a family crisis, but perhaps it's an existential crisis or abandonment or losing a loved one, grieving for somebody. Everybody goes through these things. It's human to do so. Also the Moomins. That's the wisdom that Tove Jansson has.
Okay, let's travel back to North London to actor Samuel West, who's joined by publisher Natanja Jans for a conversation about Tove Jansson and her books. Coffee being served in Moomin cups, of course.
I mean, now I'm definitely Moomin puppet, because it's not a fair question because everyone wants to be Snufkin, but I'm not. I don't think I ever was Snufkin. I'm too materialistic, and although I do like his habit of burning signs that say you can't do things. Whenever I see a sign that says you're not allowed to do something, I get very team Snufkin. And my partner, who's very law-abiding and won't pass something that says private, it's caused rows between us. But I'm a bit of a Hemilin, I think. I'm very very collector, and I do have a stamp collection, quite a good one, which I keep up and have done for 50 years now.
Which you mustn't finish.
No.
But how can you finish? Well, you might be able to finish a stamp collection with everyone going. With post offices sort of disappearing.
Yes, you might. No, that was
That's an awful thing.
That is a terrible thought, and that was a very interesting moment. That was the first time I met that idea of completeness, of perfection being wrong. You know, the idea.
Less gratifying.
Much less gratifying, and a position from which you couldn't move.
Yeah, you become an owner, and being an owner, you know.
That's in fact in it is that's nowhere near as that you become an owner instead of a collector.
Rather a quester. Yes, and he's miserable.
And he's miserable because it's perfect.
Yeah, and also, I mean, not only does it give him nothing more to do, But, I think there is that message that owning things, being materialistic, isn't the goal,
No.
I think I'm beginning to understand now, said Moomin Troll slowly. You aren't a collector any longer, are you? Now you are just an owner. That's nowhere near as much fun. No, said the Hemulan, thoroughly dejected. It's most decidedly nowhere near as much fun.
There is this wonderfully sort of non-materialistic element to the books, all the books. It's part of the values of the books. So we've got this, inclusivity is absolutely key and so important at this time of just, shutting our borders and being, awful. We have this phrase, NIMBY, not in my backyard, this sort of...
Which is the exact opposite of what we were just talking about in Sweden.
But the... Well, actually, I'm not sure that NIMBY applies to this, really. It's more... But this idea about ownership and this is my patch and I'll, nobody can do it. Nobody can, live their own life on my patch. But but there's also this thing of these wonderful moments where she insists on where she reverses the value of things. So, for instance, in Moomin Summer Madness, you've got Moomin staring in a pond and he's looking through the pond water at his mother's golden bracelet that he's put at the bottom of the pond. And Moomin Mama's response to this is, oh yes, it does look rather beautiful at the bottom of the pond. We must put all our jewellery at the bottom of the pond.
It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. And
so enlightened.
And she gets pearls.
Yeah.
She gets given pearls and decorates her garden with them.
What a nice place for them. Now we'll always know where they are.
Yes, yeah.
And in Moominland Midwinter, where Moomin Troll complains to Tiki that people are stealing the stuff, like the Moomin Mama's tray, silver tray that she used to polish. And Tiki goes, that's nice, isn't it? You had too much stuff. That's nice. And you go, hang on, you're not meant to say it. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're obviously very fond of that tray. But, little Mai needs it to skate on. So she, and Moomin Mama, when she wakes up, goes, I didn't know there were so many uses for a tray. Yes. Which is just the perfect response.
But that's how it is when you start wanting to have things. Now, I just look at them, and when I go away, I carry them in my head. Then my hands are always free, because I don't have to carry a suitcase.
So that was Snufkin from the book Comet in Moominland. So do we feel a little wiser now? A bit more Moomin-minded? I hope so, because the world is in dire need of more kindness and acceptance, especially at this time. When Tove wrote her books, it was in reflection of World War II, and today war echoes yet again. Thank you for spending this time with me and the Moomins. I hope you feel as bursting with knowledge as Hemulan, as thoughtful as Moomin Mama, as hysterical as Philly Yonk, as independent and free-spirited as Snufkin, as adventurous as Moomin Papa, as staunch and angry as Little Mai, but more than anything, as kind-hearted as Moomin Troll himself. In our next episode, we'll be raising the stakes in this story about the Moomin Phenomenon. We'll be visiting the people who were inspired by the Moomins to create their own worlds and characters.
We are now in my studio. It is a room filled with exotic instruments. Yes, I create music to the Moominvalley. So when I make music, I pick up different fruits from my garden.
Yeah, absolutely. She definitely would be one of the people that I would consider to be an inspiration. Though I think as a creative person, I loved hearing her voice as it were, or even feeling her feeling rather than hearing her voice in myself.
My name is Mimble. My name is Jennifer Saunders, and I've been your host today.
This podcast series has been created by the production company Soundtelling, on behalf of Moomin characters. Produced by Antonio de la Cruz and Melody Loveland. Executive producer is Tove Jansson. Audio technician is Gustav Sondén.